Hey guys, it's Rafi, and today I am playing a game against Blue Jay, rated 2115. Strong player. So this is the Budapest Gambit. Already we've got a solid opponent and very interesting play. So this knight e4 line, I've seen this before. It's been some time since I have been able to play it against someone, but it's certainly a line that has been played before, no doubt. I believe this is probably the way to go. Using the principle of least active piece, I'm going to go ahead and develop a knight on f3. And if he checks me on b4, then I will probably play knight b to d2. I will likely not accept this gambit here. Because I believe that it is going to present quick development from my opponent, and that is not something that I'm interested in this game. I think the most logical way to play now would be bishop f4, although knight c3 does come to mind as well. I think I'm going to go with knight c3, honestly. I feel like this move is more principled somehow. If he trades knights, then captures on e5, I'll trade queens, take on e5, and I'm threatening knight takes f7. He has to waste another move to grab the pawn back. Here I'm just considering developing my bishop to f4, still holding true to opening principles. But queen e7 is definitely in the cards. But I don't know if I need to necessarily be worried about queen e7. So I'm going to go ahead and play bishop to f4. My idea is to play e3, bishop e2, castle. So my opponent wants to go ahead and exchange off the knight and then go ahead and grab the pawn on e5. This might actually not be a bad time to go ahead and take on d6. I'm thinking about exchanging things off and just playing this endgame up a pawn, but having a really bad pawn structure. Following the principle of material, which says that you should capture material anytime you can, unless it gives it makes your opponent's pieces more active. In this case, I am not allowing any activity to my opponent, and looks like we've been able to give him rather a weakness on d6. Again, I'm going to continue playing normal moves here, e3. Which develops a piece. Which moves a pawn so that my bishop can now develop, and controls the d4 squares further, and prepares for me to play bishop e2 or bishop d3, and followed by castling. So he immediately puts pressure on the position. In particular, he's putting pressure on the pawn on c3 now. I'm thinking the best way for me to approach this would probably be to play rook to c1, which is the only move that guards the pawn and continues to give support to f3. Although rook to c1 is a pretty passive move, I will definitely admit. but I think I have to play this move now. My idea now is to play bishop e2, castle, and play the move knight to d4 very quickly. Again, I'm just going to stick with opening principles and go ahead and castle up here. It's probable that I will end up losing the c4 pawn. If I do, my plan is to try to compensate for that loss of the c4 pawn. Well, not loss because I'm up a pawn, but having to give that pawn back by trying to maybe win the d6 pawn. So my next few moves will involve basically improving the rest of my pieces, namely my queen, getting my rook to the d file, and continuing to attack and play well. I'm thinking about the best placement for my queen, and the move queen to a4 comes into mind, just giving some support to the c4 square. I'm not entirely sure if that is the most active square for the queen, though. If bishop takes f3 now, I will likely take with my g pawn. The move knight to d4 comes to mind now as well. But knight to d4 doesn't really help me much, I guess you could say. It doesn't have any direct impact towards improving any of my existing pieces, or doesn't follow any of the principles of the middle game either. So the move that I'm more likely to consider here is probably something like queen to d2. Because what that prepares is basically rook to d1, and that puts a lot of pressure on d6. So in the event that I do end up losing having to give up the c4 pawn, I still have the d6 pawn to go after. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do is just stick with principles here and just play the move queen to d2. Followed by a quick rook from f to d1. He goes ahead and captures, and I'm assuming that he was probably planning to play knight e5. Um, hmm. If g takes f3, knight e5, queen d5. I'm wondering if he is going to be able to. He can play rook c5 there, actually. But then I have queen e4. It's very complicated stuff. Let's look at the other line. Bishop takes f3, knight e5. Bishop e2, knight takes c4. Bishop takes, rook takes, rook d1, rook d8. Not sure how much I'm getting there. But I'm not so sure if I can ultimately hold on to this c4 pawn anyway. So this might be a good time to go ahead and give it up. And play for some other type of advantage. You know what? Actually, I'm going to go ahead and make him prove that he can hold on to this pawn. So let's go ahead and take this way. If we're going to go ahead and play this out, then we're going to want to maintain that pawn and make him show us that he can actually get this c4 pawn back that easily. I'm not willing to give it up that easily. I definitely want to make sure that I'm not falling too far behind on the clock. I've got 11 minutes to his 17 minutes actually. So clock is definitely an important part of the game. So here, I don't think that I have much of an option besides to play queen d5, which holds the f3 pawn and the c4 pawn. And after rook c5, queen e4 is my idea. But it's certainly a lot of trickery in the position, because after rook c5, queen e4, he has rook to e8 maybe. Maybe he doesn't have rook to e8, because I can play f4 there. If he allows me to play moves like rook from f to d1 followed by f4, I definitely think that I will feel comfortable in this position. So now we have a centralized queen, so that's good. We've got the extra pawn, that's great. We've got great control of the center, that's also good. We've got a weakness that's we're targeting on d6, that's also good. The main thing now is for us to quickly get our pieces mobilized. So maybe I will play f4 first, because it's an attacking move. And it doesn't seem to relinquish any of the important squares in the position. The good thing is that all the light squares in the king side are guarded by the e2 bishop. So letting go of e4 control is not the end of the world for me. I think there is only one good move here that makes sense, which is queen to e4. Very interesting. He wants to trade queens here. Definitely wasn't expecting that. Very interesting. So if I play king h1, he's just going to trade queens and then pick up on c4. So pretty much it's no use for us to not trade queens at this point. Now it's going to basically revolve around me trying to get that d6 pawn. And yeah. I'm thinking maybe an improving move like king to g2 makes the most sense here. But then comes knight takes c4 and rook g5. I'm not sure if I like that so much either. So it might be that we have to play a move like f4 here. My goal is to here immediately put pressure on d6. So I'm not gonna wait too long to play this move. I'm wondering if I can play now a move like rook takes d5, rook takes d5, bishop takes c4, pinning the rook. I feel like that gets me at least a pawn. Rook takes d5, rook takes d5, bishop takes c4, rook d8, rook d1. Definitely seems pretty good to me. He's probably considering knight takes e3 here, I would imagine. But then I can take on c5, followed by taking the knight. If I'm playing my moves correctly, I believe that here I could just be up a piece. I didn't want to make the f4 pawn a weakness by pushing the e4 pawn to defend, to try to win back the pawn. But in hindsight, I might have actually should have done that. Maybe, I'm not sure. I would definitely get a pass pawn in that sense, in that case. Now it's just a matter of converting this into a win, which is hopefully not going to be too difficult, but I am definitely down on time, so we do need to play rather quickly here. So if we take here, then rook c8, attacks the bishop. Yeah, I'm just going to take this way. Because after rook c8, I will be able to play something like bishop to b3. Or sorry, rook to d4. And if b5 now, I can play bishop takes b5, rook takes c3. And I definitely think that I will get a lot of counterplay here because I'll be able to quickly play a4, bishop d5, rook d7, and really put his king in a bind. My next few moves, if he doesn't do anything and sits there, I'm going to play king f1, king e2, king d3, and get the king involved in the center and trade off the rooks, which will hopefully give me a winning game. So he wants to play b5 this way now. Thing is, if he plays b5, I can play bishop d3. If he takes on d3, I can take on b5. If he takes on c3, I mean. The idea here is that if he's grabbing the c3 pawn, I'm going to go ahead and grab b5. And that will help me to further simplify this position. A move like, I believe, oh, shoot. He's going to go off of this pawn here. Can I let him? Probably so, but let's just play it safe. No need to give him the extra pawn for no reason. Now rook a4 is definitely what I want to go for here. Followed by taking the a pawn, and if I can do that, then this should hopefully be a very easy to convert game from there. I will immediately attack. Probably he's going to want to improve his king now. Or hopefully resign the game and not make me play out this endgame. One of the two things is definitely going to happen. So the next plan is after taking the a5. Yeah, he resigned here. So the plan would have been basically for me to win this game is to take the a5 pawn and then cut off the king, and then slowly march the a pawn up to the victory square. So that would have been the simple plan for finishing this off. But let's go ahead and quickly analyze this one and see some areas where we could have possibly played more accurately. I think for the most part, I don't think that I made some major blunders in this game. I don't think I did, but I could be wrong. It's possible that, there could be things that we both missed. Not sure. But I'm gonna, looks like the computer is already finished analyzing. Looks like 3 inaccuracies, 0 mistakes, 0 blunders, and 20 average centi pawn loss in this one. So overall, pretty decent play from my side. So let's go back and look at this game. So knight f6, c4, e5. I took e4. And computer likes this move a3. Very interesting. But from a development standpoint, I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of that move. But I can see the point about it because, I mean, he's just trying to avoid all the... Black can really get white in a tangle if he plays bishop b4 check and I have to play knight b to d2. My pieces can't develop smoothly in that position. But I was going to do that, allow that to happen, then play a3. Queen c2 right away attacks the knight. This knight c3 was definitely not a good move. Queen c3 was definitely the way to go. I'm sorry, queen c2 was the way to go. And queen c2, knight c5, bishop g5. It's definitely interesting stuff. Yeah, I gave up all my advantage after knight c3. So here I went ahead and took on d6 because I did not want him to snap off the knight on f3 and then take on e5. But computer is finding this very interesting move, queen to b3, which I didn't calculate much in the game. But the b7 pawn is definitely a weakness to go after. It's not a weakness, but it's a point of attack. So developing the queen and attacking the b7 point was definitely something I should have considered. But if queen b3, what if he takes on e5? I guess then I can take on b7, and yeah, that's not the ideal situation for him. Just computer say after this. Very cool. I'm just taking this back. Interesting stuff. But yeah, I didn't play the queen b3 move. I played taking on d6, bishop takes, and here he took with the pawn, trying to keep his chances alive of trying to fight for an edge here. I think taking with the queen would have led to an endgame where I'm up a pawn and black doesn't have any clear compensation for how to get that pawn back. Let's just say that. Any clear way of getting the pawn back. e3. Queen f6. Rook c1. Castle. Bishop b2. Rook c8. Castle. All this is pretty logical stuff, so I'm not going too deep in depth into it. b6. I think the point of b6, I'm not sure exactly why he played b6, to be honest. In any case, h3 was the way to go. I played the move that I thought was the most principled in the position, which is basically developing my queen and connecting my rooks. And piling up on the d6 weakness. So I definitely fought hard to try to hold on to these pawns as long as possible. So I played queen d5 here, rook c5, queen e4. And here he really surprised me with this queen g6 check. I definitely wasn't expecting him to trade off the queens and try to play it this way. I thought maybe he would go for some attack, maybe like moving the knight out of the way and swinging the rook over to the g file or something, but yeah, definitely went straight for the pawn this way. Check. Trades. He took with the f pawn, and I played 4. Knight takes. Rook d1, activating the rook, and here is where he made the mistake, and the major mistake in the game, which was d5, which allows me to snap off the pawn on d5 with this little tactic. And here he made another mistake by taking on d5, which leaves the knight on c4 hanging, and I'm going to get my rook back. So here he should have just doubled up the rooks like the computer is suggesting, or something else. But the way he played it is just losing. Now I'm just getting a free piece out of this, and I'm getting my rook back, and I got a piece and a pawn, actually. And it's simply lost at this point. So e4 or rook d1 were both pretty solid options here. I was thinking, like, the reason I didn't play e4 is because I thought maybe he could play something like this. But yeah, I mean, f4 is just not even worth it because I'm just getting a passed pawn. Like, if he takes this, I'm just getting my rook behind this, and it's impossible to stop this pawn now. Should have looked into that a little bit deeper, but didn't. But this way is also just as good, I think, effective. Here I could have allowed him to go after the h pawn, and that would definitely still give me a pretty winning advantage. But again, played it very safe. Picked up the last pawn also, and yeah, this is where he resigned. So overall, very decent game, and I think yeah, definitely some points where I could have played more accurately, but I think overall I'm very happy with this game overall, and I hope you guys learned something from it. And if you did, leave it in the comments below, and we will definitely discuss further. Thank you guys, and catch you in the next video.